In the 1990s, Americans were promised a future with better wages, more jobs, and greater freedom in purchasing products and hiring workers. That future, we were told, would be made possible by a little piece of legislation known as NAFTA. The reality of NAFTA is far different than the rosy picture painted for us by the Clinton administration, and we've seen a decline in worker protections, hundreds of thousands of jobs shipped out of the country, and stagnant wages. But still today, you can hear those exact same talking points being thrown around by the Obama administration as they try to sell us the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And I have Howard Nations with me now to tell us why we shouldn't believe a word that they say. Howard, I'm sure you remember, you follow politics very closely, always have. Back in the 1990s, we're told, listen, I'm Bill Clinton. I've got this plan. It's called NAFTA. All these economic problems we're having, just listen to me, just trust me. NAFTA is going to solve them all. And today, we're hearing the same thing from Barack Obama, aren't we?
We surely are. We didn't learn the lessons of the past because NAFTA promised jobs and prosperity for everyone. And the truth of the matter is that the job market in America was greatly reduced. They killed U.S. jobs. Workers in America lost bargaining power. They've had pay cuts, benefit cuts, and income inequality has gone up as corporations got richer and richer. And now President Obama is selling the Trans-Pacific Partnership with the same promises that Bill Clinton made in the early 90s. It's interesting that Obama, when he was candidate Obama, he said that NAFTA was a mistake that was negotiated by corporate lobbyists and that it needed to be renegotiated. But the history of corporate lobbyists and presidents writing pro-corporate trade agreements is repeating itself.
It is. And, the renegotiation part that candidate Obama had said would have been phenomenal, because right now what we have is corporations are allowed to go into North America, say an American company can go to Mexico, and the NAFTA allows that company to trump the laws of the country. A great example, Exxon up in Canada a few years back, they wanted to do some offshore drilling in an area where the Canadian government had deemed you cannot do offshore drilling. Exxon challenges this under NAFTA and wins and begins their offshore drilling. The will of the company trumps the country's laws, and that's exactly what NAFTA brought us. And this is only a few countries involved in NAFTA. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is going to be a much larger coalition of, you can't even call them countries, they're companies. Companies
Right.
want this. The countries, companies are pulling the strings here. And most of this, what we know of the TPP has come from document leaks, not because President Obama or anybody in the administration or Congress has stepped forward and said, okay, I just want to update you and say this is what it's going to do. No, we have to find out through leaks, because they know that if the American public were to understand fully what is going to happen to them under the TPP, they would not get a single person out there to support it.
That's true. If you look at what happened under NAFTA, we had 1 million net jobs lost in the United States. You had higher income inequality, and listen, $181 billion U.S. trade deficit just between us, Mexico, and Canada, and the doubling of immigration from Mexico into the United States. And it's the same story back then. It was corporate lies. You may recall General Electric, Chrysler particularly, and Caterpillar. They promised that if you pass NAFTA, we'll create a specific number of jobs in the United States. Instead, what they did once they got NAFTA passed, they fired workers in the United States and moved their operations to Mexico. You would think that would have helped the Mexican workers, but the fact of the matter is, in a recent survey, they showed that Mexican poverty rate at 52.3% is the same now as it was pre-NAFTA, 1994, and their real wages are the same. Their unemployment is significantly increased. So the whole thing was a complete failure on both sides of the border for everybody except corporations. So the whole TPP, everything is corporate driven.
Well, and that's a great point to bring up, is the fact that we do have a lot of Americans who say, oh, well, they sending our jobs over down to Mexico. It's not helping them. They don't have the same kind of labor standards that we have here in the United States. A corporation can go down there, pay pennies on the dollar in a different currency that's already, less valuable than the dollar. They save tons of money. It doesn't help anyone in Mexico. Yeah, it might create a few jobs, but they're jobs that aren't enough to support a family, to support a worker. And so with the TPP, we're looking at doing that, all across the Pacific. And, I think a big point of this is the fact that people aren't necessarily learning from the mistakes of the past. Obama is out there using, verbatim the exact talking points that Clinton used back in 1994, 93 and 94. Dave Johnson with the Campaign for America's Future really took the time and he laid out everything Clinton said, compared it to everything Obama said, and you almost can't tell the two apart right now, can you?
Yeah, you're right. It's not that we don't learn from the mistakes of the past. It is that corporate America has learned from the successes of the past. Clinton's promises that you're talking about were that they didn't work out. Jobs making cars, electronics, apparel, everything having to do with manufacturing left the Midwest and moved to Mexico. Mexico alone eliminated 692 net U.S. jobs. But the fact of the matter is that we don't know yet because we haven't seen what the TPP looks like, but you can bet it's going to be improved upon from the viewpoint of the corporation. They're making the same promises today that Obama and the corporate lobbyists about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. They're saying it'll increase jobs, it'll increase exports. They don't bother to tell you that the imports will exceed exports. They're creating huge trade deficits. And Obama says that we need to get American products sold overseas, and that I like the one about half of the manufacturing executives are looking at bringing their jobs back from China. Yeah, they're looking at bringing them from China to Vietnam, where the average income is less than, for the worker, is less than $1 per hour.
The Center for Economic Policy Research, they've done the math on this, and they say that if TPP were put into place now, by the year 2025, we're looking at 0.13% GDP growth as a result of the TPP. Now, 0.13%, when you're talking about huge numbers, you know what? It's a gain. But we can get much larger growth by doing simple things like raising the minimum wage, by closing corporate tax loopholes, by repealing subsidies for an oil industry that already brings in $40 billion, per company per year. So why on earth would we want to get such a minimal gain in real GDP growth when we could do any number of policies that would not only help American citizens, but help American businesses and help the economy? I don't understand. We've got about a minute left. Help me understand why we want to go to such extreme lengths when we could enact these policies that would help everyone.
I can answer that for you in 2 words: corporate profit. That's what it's all about. This is scary. Public Citizen, you were talking about the study by the Center for Economic and Policy Research. They, along with Public Citizen, say that 90% of U.S. workers will take a pay cut if TPP is passed, because the TPP, there will be a wage loss for all but the richest 10%. So that means if you're making $87,000 per year or less, the TPP will mean a wage loss for you. It'll also cause a second Mexican migration because Mexican jobs are going to move to Vietnam. And so the whole idea that this thing is being done in secret has very good reasoning behind it. The congressional staff can't see TPP. There's no analysis by Congress. It's being put on a fast track with 90 days to debate it for an up or down vote. No time for the press to review it. So if TPP is so good for America, why is it being kept secret? They're pushing it through fast track. And why is it just an up or down vote instead of debate and amendment and the way we usually do business in America? Corporate profit is the answer to your question, Farron.
And you know, President Obama has stood firmly behind the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He's all for it. And I don't know that in the little bit of time he has left in office that he's going to be able to push it through. But I can make a promise that if we end up with a Hillary Clinton or anybody who calls themselves a Republican in the White House after 2016, this thing is going to become a reality and it's going to be a disaster. Howard, I appreciate you telling us this story. Stay on it. We will keep covering this until it finally goes away.
By the way, Farron, one last question. Whatever happened to candidate Obama?
I would love to see candidate Obama again. I thought at the beginning of this year he was talking a little bit more tough on things like the Keystone XL pipeline, but behind closed doors, he really is just the same milquetoast, Democrat in name only. Let's do what we can to help corporations president, and this country doesn't need any more of that at all. Thank you, Howard.
Thanks, Farron.